Good evening, everybody. A lot of stories to get to tonight. There's been more town hall news, and we'll get to that. Justin Trudeau not making news during the town hall, but just doing something completely ridiculous and silly. Before we get to the rest of the news, come join CanadaPoly.com. We've got a wonderful conversation going on, and we'd love to have you. It's a private forum. That means you have to register, but once you register, you can join our conversation. As I said, we'd love to have you. Okay, so what is going on? Canada, a little while ago, and I did another video talking about driving and the rules that were brought into place because of the legalization of marijuana. And these rules also affected alcohol regulations and driving under the influence of alcohol, right? So it changed everything with regard to how much alcohol you can have and be impaired. I think it's 0.05 now, and there's a fine and 12 hours off or 12 hours suspension, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's other fines where if you have marijuana in your system and alcohol, it's more than just alcohol or vice versa. Also, in every province but Ontario, if you have a medical if you are a medical marijuana patient, then you're exempt from this. But in every other province, there are very strict driving laws with regard to marijuana. And if you're a daily smoker, you will certainly test over the very low limits set by the government. But that's not what this is about today. Marijuana is a big issue, and I don't think their laws will stand up to the Constitution in court, and they will be challenged. 100% they will be challenged. Hope that you are not the person sitting in a jail cell or having to pay fines while it's being challenged, because it's going to happen. And so this story is about alcohol and police, the new powers granted by these new flawed laws that were granted by the Liberal government and passed by our Liberal Senate. And they're bad, awful laws. And how bad are they? Buckle up, it's terrible. Okay, so returning bottles to the beer store, beware of possible breath test by the police. Taking back bottles to the beer store, a Mississauga man discovered this past weekend that it can lead to a breath test for alcohol by police. Quote, he said, "I saw you at the beer store, and to me you were taking back what looked like, in my opinion, an excessive amount of bottles," said Art, a 70-year-old Streetsville resident. He asked Global News not to use his surname. At around noon on Saturday, Art went to his local Ontario beer store and returned around 3 dozen beer bottles and 10 wine bottles, which his family had accumulated over the holiday season. And I'm going to skip down. He was not charged with anything. This basically just describes the traffic stop. Okay. Until the change, which came into effect in December, and we're talking about the change in laws that I was talking about at the top, Canadian police required suspicion a driver had alcohol in their bloodstream before instigating on a breath sample, or insisting on a breath sample. Changes to federal legislation now permit police to demand a sample without cause. Quote, "What I want all Canadian drivers to understand is the likelihood of getting caught should you make the criminal choice to drive under the influence of alcohol or drugs. The likelihood is about to increase exponentially because the police have new authorities and new tools," said Bill Blair, Minister of Border Security and Organized Crime Reduction. Yeah, I laughed during the title of your ministry, Mr. Blair, because it's a paper ministry that means nothing. You have nobody reporting to you. Frustrating. Anyway, back to the article. In an announcement on December 4th, Blair is also the former chief of police in Toronto. Oh, and yeah, so while he was locking people up for marijuana, he was also making sure that he had stocks in the new marijuana companies that he's helping set up. What a hypocrite. Anyway, back to the article. Police do not need any evidence basis whatsoever to demand a sample, said Joseph Newberger, a Toronto-based criminal defense lawyer who said the Peel Regional Police officer was well within his new rights to demand a sample after Art dropped off his empties at a beer store. That's because they don't need any cause at all. They can just ask you for a breath sample. Back to the article. However, Newberger expressed deep concern over the changes which give police powers to ask for breath samples even when someone is no longer driving or near their vehicle. It's part of another section of the legislation which states that any driver, quote, commits an offense who has within 2 hours after ceasing to operate a motor vehicle is still over the legal limit. Newberger says under the new rules, nothing stops police from going into someone's home, to a bar, to demand samples from someone under suspicion of driving under the influence of alcohol. Quote, they're driving on the road, they're heading home, and they arrive at home, go in to watch a hockey game, crack open a few bottles of beer, or have a scotch or something, he explained. Quote, a person who saw the person driving has called it in. Police arrive at the house, knock on the door. The person answers the door and they say, sir, we've had a complaint about your driving. We need you to provide a roadside sample. If the person refuses to provide the sample, he or she could be charged. He also said police could approach the driver in a drinking establishment and make the same demand. Neuberger said he believes the new provisions are troubling and will likely be tested and possibly overturned in courts. Quote, this isn't about carnage on the roads, it's about civil liberties. And yeah, it's really about civil liberties. This is wildly unconstitutional. This assumes criminality without anything. They don't need the suspicion of you breaking the law. They can just ask you to make sure you haven't. And that was deemed unconstitutional. It's the same thing as carding, right? And Toronto went absolutely crazy about carding, and we're not allowed to do that, but we can assume suspicion of absolutely every Canadian of drinking alcohol and operating their motor vehicle. That seems really, really crazy. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Remember the video that Justin Trudeau did from the PMO's office in Centre Block? Yeah, he's going to pay $500 for that. Is that the going rate for the Prime Minister's office for however long he sat there and recorded that video, that fundraising video, that illegal fundraising video, that ethics or that potentially ethics violating fundraising video? He's just going to pay $500. No problem, guys. Here's some money. I'll just throw it at you. Right? That seems the way Justin Trudeau solves problems. Here is a cartoon that I saw, and I thought it was worth sharing. It's got a Hezbollah member and an ISIS member and a Hamas member and an Al-Qaeda member, and Justin Trudeau right in the center saying, vote for Justin Trudeau. And it says, sadly, there's a lot more truth depicted in this cartoon than most Canadians are willing to acknowledge. I am willing to acknowledge this terrifying reality. Justin Trudeau needs to go. He's a frightening figure. Okay, we're getting into Yellow Vest territory. The other day I said, I think that the Yellow Vest protest is not dangerous, but it's getting, the government is trying to co-opt it. They're trying to push a narrative. They're trying to say that the Yellow Vests are, well, they're trying to apply the Nazi, whatever, these alt-right crazy Nazi people are using the Yellow Vest to whatever. So here is somebody from the UK saying that things are getting shut down there. It says, quote, in the past few hours, the Yellow Vests UK have had their social media accounts banned, had their PayPal accounts removed, had, quote, journalists show up at their elderly parents' houses, had lies spread about them on national TV and the media. Tell me there's no establishment. And this was coordinated. This is this past Saturday, right? Or this is a couple of days ago, not this past Saturday, sorry. But this is happening. They're trying to either discredit the movement, they're trying to paint this movement for their own means in the coming weeks. They're going to use this stuff that they're saying, those alt-right crazy people, to crack down further on it. We're seeing that in France, we're seeing that in Paris. And here's an article from our own media. Here's January 8th. This is a couple of days ago. Facebook reviewing comments about killing Trudeau on Canadian Yellow Vest page. This is serious, guys. I'm going to have my serious voice on for a minute, okay? Discussion around killing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau have been appearing on Facebook pages for Canadians who align themselves with the so-called Yellow Vest protests in France. The Yellow Vest Canada group has gathered more than 100,000 members on Facebook since it launched a month ago as French anti-government demonstrations got underway. But while this group's own rules encourage civility and prohibit the advocacy of violence, the page is rife with comments that wish for and sometimes encourage the death of the Prime Minister. Very scary, right? I scroll down. Facebook said it was reviewing the posts and comments and would take action as warranted. Quote, we do not tolerate harassment on Facebook, and it is our aim to prevent any potential real-world harm that may be related to content on our platform, a Facebook spokesperson said. That's why we remove content, disable accounts, and use a combination of technology, reports from our community, and human review to enforce our policies. On Tuesday, a Facebook account used to organize, quote, Yellow Vest protests in London was suspended for hate speech. A Twitter account, Yellow Vest Canada Exposed, has been tracking the comments and tagging the RCMP and Canadian Security Intelligence Services. One read, quote, wish a sharpshooter would put a bullet in his head. Quote, the comments coming about killing Trudeau are concerning because they are advocating murder and demonstrate the extent to which some members of the Yellow Vest Canada hold extremist views, said terrorism analyst Jessica Davis. Whether or not they will act on those views remains to be seen. A post this week about Trudeau's ski vacation in Whistler, BC elicited a flurry of harsh comments, some mentioning his brother Michael, who died in a 1998 avalanche. And I scroll down. Well, it says, hopefully he ends up like his brother, one comment says. Others referred to Sonny Bono, the U.S. singer and former California congressman who died in 1998 when he struck a tree while skiing. With any luck, he'll do a Sonny Bono, one comment read. Another comment read, quote, push him off a cliff, one user wrote, while another asked how easy it would be to stab Trudeau. And that's the general gist of it. The article ends with, the Yellow Vest movement in Canada is dominated by the extreme right and has the potential to spin off violent subgroups. Overall, the movement is not a threat to national security, but elements within may take violent action on their extremist ideas. Man, that sounds really scary, right? Push him off a cliff. What kind of crazy news article or institution would print such a thing? Here's the Toronto Star, published today. Man at BC Town Hall asked Trudeau to push Trump off a cliff. Seriously. Here's the article. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau gets a lot of creative suggestions about how to deal with the President of the United States. Murder was new. And I scroll down. The man who did not identify himself by name began, quote, I just want a really, really quick, really funny question pertaining about Donald Trump. He paused for dramatic effect. Quote, would it really be bad relationship advice to give you, to just tell you, from all of us, just push him off a cliff. We're good. There was laughter and some scattered applause from the crowd. Like, really, I'll buy you a beer, the man continued. He concluded. But anyway, thank you for giving me the mic. I just wanted to get that off. You mentioned him. Trudeau, smiling a restrained smile, responded by gently advising Canadians not to joke about such things. Quote, I wasn't expecting a threat of violence against our closest ally, but in politics, people have all sorts of opinions, Trudeau said, and all sorts of perspectives about who is leading at any given moment. The relationship between Canada and the United States goes far deeper than who happens to be prime minister and who happens to be president. Thank goodness, Mr. Trudeau, because you are an awful, awful prime minister, and Mr. Trump is going to be quite happy to be rid of you in October, I'm sure. Back to the article. After touting Canadian unity during the NAFTA negotiations, which I think is funny because it's called the USMCA, actually, he said, and keeping things on a pragmatic, regular, thoughtful level and not, stooping to insults or jokes. Yeah, they printed the ors and the us. I think it's an important thing that Canadians should keep in mind when dealing with the world. But I appreciate your comment. Okay, so I think it's really interesting to highlight, and this isn't me, this is a user on Reddit, Cemetery21, I believe is the user, who pointed out, who shared this article and said, just fine, or absolutely not fine to say we're going to push Trudeau off a cliff, but totally okay and pretty encouraged by the Toronto Star to push Trump off a cliff, and even encouraging Prime Minister Trudeau himself to do it. Weird choice. So having Facebook comments on Facebook where a group clearly says that they do not tolerate those kind of comments is an alt-right group and a news organization that takes money from this guy that advocates for pushing Trudeau or Trump off a cliff, having the prime minister push Trump off a cliff. That's a-okay? Because that seems like a weird double standard. Is that white supremacy? No, I think that's just stupidity. Really, I think it's absolute blatant stupidity, and I think that they think Canadians don't read the paper or read the news. And hey, guys, there are people paying attention. Stop being absolutely silly. This is ridiculous. A newspaper calling for, even reporting on this is silly. Could you maybe cover the Syrian non-answer and cover it in a serious way? This is insulting, and I can't believe that our tax dollars have to go to support this trash. Absolutely. Daniel Dale, you should be ashamed of yourself. Ridiculous. So check out the People's Party of Canada.ca. Join the conversation. Tell me where I went wrong. I have gone wrong in a few places, and I'll mention them now. I said the Prime Minister or the Premier of Ontario was Davies, and his last name is actually Davis. It was Premier Davis, not Premier Davies. My bad. And so that's where I'll leave you tonight. Thank you very much for watching. Check out CanadaPoly.com if you've got time. We'd love to have you. And Yeah, that's about it. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you tomorrow.